So let me ask you a question. If God really wanted to change the world, and I mean completely flip the tables, why would he come as a baby? Why not a general? Why not a prophet on a mountain with lightning behind him? Why not a president? Why not an emperor? And if he's going to come as a baby, why not come as a child of a wealthy or a powerful family, a diplomat's family, an imperial child? If you're going to start a revolt to change heaven and earth, are you really going to start it with a marginalized, impoverished family and under hush hush, shameful circumstances? Why start quietly, shamefully? What's up, everybody? I'm Tyson Putthoff, and this is scene one of the JesusX30 challenge. 30 days of walking through the strategic life and mission of Jesus. And today we're backing up, not just before the miracles and not just before the manger, but to the part of the story where almost nobody is paying attention yet. Because how the story starts tells us a lot about what kind of story it's going to be. Okay? Keep that in mind. Just where are we in the life and messianic campaign of Jesus, chronologically, historically? So we're somewhere around 3 BC in the hills of Judea and the rural villages of Galilee. This is pre-campaign. So this is before Jesus has said anything, before John the Baptist is baptizing anyone. And in fact, Jesus isn't even born yet. Neither is John. And Jesus's mom, Mary, is up in Nazareth, which was honestly just kind of a forgotten place, pretty much unknown during Jesus's time. We all know about Nazareth now because of Jesus, but during his lifetime, it's a tiny village, not known for anything good, and it's seated within a highly politically charged region. People in the Galilee were known as being pretty feisty, and they hated that they were the subjects of Roman rulers. They believed, as the people of God, they shouldn't be anyone's subjects. So tensions were always simmering, even during times of so-called peace. And in fact, in the decades before and during Jesus's lifetime, there were dozens of revolts against Rome. And these were almost always carried out by none other than Galilean Jews. Jewish revolutionaries from Galilee who hailed themselves as the Messiah or the anointed one from God, and who tried to overthrow the Roman authorities and liberate the Jewish people from Roman rule. And needless to say, they all failed at some point or another. But this is important to note because this is the region in which Jesus was raised, right? The Galilee was ripe with revolutionary zeal, and this will be important for Jesus's own messianic campaign and for both how he carries out his campaign and how people around him react to what he's doing and what he's saying and how he's carrying out his messianic campaign. And we're going to see more of that in the upcoming scenes. But for now, Mary and Joseph, Jesus' parents, are up in Galilee, while Elizabeth and Zechariah, you've heard of them, they're down in the Judean hill country. They're a priestly family closer to Jerusalem, but they're still out of the spotlight. So we've got 2 pregnancies, Mary and Elizabeth, 2 soon-to-be mothers, and basically no attention from anyone important. But this is where it all begins. This is where Jesus' story begins. Each of the Gospels begins Jesus' story in its own way. John's Gospel opens with this kind of big cosmic idea. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In other words, before anything else existed, before empires or armies, Jesus already was. But now, somehow, the Son of God is becoming human. He's stepping into the world through this young woman named Mary. And the way that happens isn't loud or flashy. Remember, there's angels, there's angelic announcements, and in the ancient world, in the Bible, angels were always terrifying, but still there are no crowds, no press, no social media. So the angel Gabriel tells Mary she's going to have a son. He's going to be called the Son of the Most High. He's going to inherit the throne of David. He's going to change the world. And while I'm sure she struggled behind the scenes with what was happening, she quietly says, okay, I'm in. It's wild when you think about it. The whole plan to redeem the world from sin and death and chaos hinges on a teenage girl in a nowhere town saying yes to an angelic being who says she's going to be pregnant outside of marriage with the Son of God. Okay, you follow me? Pretty mind-blowing, to be honest. And she's not the only one dealing with an almost comically crazy situation like this. Her cousin Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mom, who's older, has no kids, has been unable to get pregnant, kind of a story that you hear about in the Bible on a number of occasions. She gets pregnant miraculously. And when Mary visits her, there's this moment, you remember Elizabeth says, "Blessed are you," to Mary, and Elizabeth's own baby, John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, leaps inside of her. So, but once again, there's no fanfare, there's no power moves, just two women, two people whom this male dominated society overlooks, views as less than, and they're having a conversation that all of the angelic forces and beings in heaven are paying close attention to. I can guarantee that. Meanwhile, there's Zechariah, Elizabeth's husband. He's John the Baptist's dad, Jesus' uncle. He's a priest. He's doing his temple duties. And lo and behold, an angel shows up to him and tells him that his wife Elizabeth, who hasn't been able to have a child into old age, is going to have a son. Okay, he doesn't believe it. Zechariah, he doesn't really believe it. And he says that that son, John the Baptist, is going to grow up and have a central role in helping Jesus to understand who he is, and who will then launch his own public campaign before Jesus launches his. And it's going to be John who paves the way for Jesus to do what he's going to end up doing. And Zechariah is skeptical. He doesn't believe it. He's struck mute for a while, so he can't talk, which kind of fits the theme here, right? Silence, waiting, things happening quietly beneath the surface, and not a lot of people talking about it except those who are immediately involved in the situation. John is going to grow up outside the usual systems, okay, which is a little bit paradoxical, we might say. So even though he's from a priestly family, he's going to head into the wilderness. He's going to abandon that priestly life, at least in a formal way. So even though he comes from an elite family with power and honor and influence in and around Jerusalem, he's going to break from the norm. He's going to abandon that life. He's going to head to the wilderness where he will be the catalyst for Jesus's own messianic campaign. So while the world's watching Caesar and Herod and temple politics, God's working through a silent priest, two pregnant women who really shouldn't be pregnant, each for different reasons, and a baby who's going to wear scratchy fur clothes and eat locusts and yell at kings. Right? It's not the kind of plan anyone would have drawn up. It's definitely not the kind of plan we tend to draw up. It's not how any royal figure ever came to power, but it's exactly the kind of beginning that God just seems to love. Question is, what do we do with all of this? Right? One thing that stands out to me is how deliberate the quiet is, the silence. The quiet isn't just the backstory, it's actually the strategy. God starts his whole revolution away from the spotlight and with people who really have no business being a part of a story being written by God himself. And he does all of this on purpose. I mean, think about it. Jesus comes from a messy genealogy. It's filled with outsiders, Gentiles, complicated stories, scandal. Remember Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, the wife of Uriah, that's Bathsheba. And now this unwed pregnant teenager named Mary. That's Jesus's genealogy. That's Jesus's story. And that's all built into his identity from the start. It's not cleaned up. The gospel writers don't leave those aspects of his story out. It's not pure in the sense that we would like it. It doesn't fit the way anyone would expect a pure and a holy and a righteous God to write his story of rescue and revolution. But it's the truth. It's just how it is. And that's who Jesus is. The same is true with the geography of Jesus's life. Think about it. Galilee, the Judean hills, these aren't centers of power. Galilee was up north, far away from Jerusalem in the south, and far away from the temple, the Jerusalem temple, which was absolutely magnificent. There are Jewish writings that actually call it the belly button of the universe, is the center of everything. And that's not where Jesus is from. The Judean hills were where crazy people lived, where wild animals roamed, where bandits gathered together to cause trouble. And you only went there if you were some sort of crazed animal-like person. These are fringe places. These are not the centers of power. But they're also places where people are waiting and hurting and hoping. And I think that maybe that's the point. Maybe that's still whom God chooses and where God chooses to begin his most important work. If you've ever felt like your life is a little bit off the radar, like you're kind of in the background, you're just a role player, things just feel slow and unimportant, you and I really need to remember and embrace how the story of Jesus starts. We all remember that Jesus came to change the world, to rescue the world, to break through and launch this cosmic revolution. But that's not how his story starts. It's not loud, it's not polished, it's hidden, it's unusual, it doesn't meet anyone's expectations, not even our own today. But it's holy, it's the truth, and it's the way God operates. Sometimes God's biggest moves begin in places no one's watching. Sometimes it's in the womb of the unwed, pregnant teenager, or the woman who's given up hope because she's just too old to have children. That's where the revolution begins sometimes. Sometimes it's in the poverty-stricken area of the city where you don't drive unless you have no other choice, where God ignites his revolts. I'll tell you this, whomever God uses and wherever he begins his greatest work, it doesn't appear to be at the top of society or at the heart of what we think of as blessed. And I want you to think about that. And I want you to know this, and I want you to feel it. I'll be honest, I struggle with my calling, my purpose on a daily basis. I'm 100% convinced even today that God called me over 25 years ago to write and to teach and to serve in different ways. There is nothing in my makeup, if you know me, nothing about who I am or what I'm naturally good at that fits what I know God's called me to do. And if you have those kinds of doubts about who you are, about whether you have a place, and not just any place, but a central place and a key role in God's empire, because your backstory isn't something to celebrate, because the state of your life right now, you're still kind of a mess, I want you to think again. God chose Mary, God chose Nazareth, God chose Elizabeth, God chose the wilderness. When God wants to do something big, if I'm reading the story right, he always uses those whom nobody else would expect. And that includes you. We're going to pick up tomorrow with scene 2, where Jesus' story edges a little bit closer to public life. For now, Leko Mod, go and learn. Come back for scene 2 of the JesusX30 challenge.